Hi, I'm Nora, and this is the story of how a canceled birthday, a forgotten porch swing, and a dusty manila envelope unraveled everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and who truly sees us. They said they were too tired for lunch, but I saw their cars parked 2 blocks over, balloons and barbecue smoke rising for a celebration that wasn't mine. And maybe that was the moment I realized I wasn't forgotten. I was edited out. Before we go any further, tell me, have you ever felt like an outsider in your own family? If yes, comment number 1. If no, comment number 0. This is a family drama you don't want to miss. It was supposed to be a quiet birthday, not a lonely one, but the text from my mom made it something else entirely. I had just poured my second cup of coffee, watching the morning sun catch the dust motes swirling through my kitchen window. The porch swing creaked gently beneath me, and the chipped ceramic of Grandpa's old fishing mug felt warm in my hands. I'd set out the blue checkered quilt my grandmother used for every family birthday, now draped over the backyard table like a quiet promise that someone would come. Then my phone buzzed. Everyone's wiped out. Let's rain check lunch, sweetie. That was it. No apology, no explanation. Just my mother's breezy tone, ending in a toodles from the voicemail that followed. They had done this before. Forgotten, overlooked, reshuffled plans without telling me. But this time felt deliberate. I sat still, rereading the message. Maybe they really were tired. Maybe I was overthinking. I tried to let it go, but when I stepped out to take the trash down to the curb, something tugged at my gut. There it was, Judith's Subaru, unmistakable with the faded Lexington Historical Society sticker on the bumper, parked just a few houses down. Then came Lara's shiny black SUV, tucked behind Uncle Fred's Buick, the one he's driven since I was in high school. I stood on the sidewalk, a half-full garbage bag in hand, as it all started to spin. They weren't wiped out. They were here. Back inside, my hands moved on instinct as I unlocked my phone and opened Instagram. First photo, a plate of ribs, captioned Backyard Birthday Bash. Then the next, Lara blowing out candles on a cake, the pink frosting spelling her name in cursive. Her name, not mine. There were Judith and Paul smiling with paper plates, Aunt Sandy laughing beside the grill, cousins I hadn't seen in months playing cornhole on the lawn. All of them. Celebrating, just not me. My heart pounded. I looked at the muffins cooling untouched on the counter, the cloth napkins I'd folded that morning like some hopeful ritual. I'd even set out the little tea light candles from the dollar store, thinking they'd make things feel special. I turned off the playlist I'd made, classic tunes Grandpa used to hum, and closed the kitchen window against the laughter echoing faintly from Lara's backyard. I didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, I pulled out my laptop, opened a blank document, and stared at the screen. This wasn't forgetfulness. It was exclusion, masked with fake politeness. I don't need cake, I muttered, but I do need answers. They didn't forget me. They erased me. The rain had started sometime after sunset, tapping against the window like it had something gentle to say. I curled up on the old armchair near the bookshelf, the one that still smelled faintly of lemon polish and pine from Grandma's days. A soft amber glow from the lamp stretched across the room, catching the edges of photo albums stacked haphazardly on the coffee table. I hadn't opened them in a while. My phone sat in my lap like a dare. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over Mom's name. I didn't want a fight. I just wanted something real. A crack. A flicker of guilt. I tapped call. "Nora, honey." Her voice came through like a smile dipped in syrup. "We figured you'd enjoy some time to yourself. You've been working so hard. A beat passed. So you didn't think I'd want to spend my birthday with my own family? She exhaled, a polite sigh. Sweetie, it's not that. We just thought you'd want a break. A break from what? Setting the table? Folding napkins? There was silence, brief but sharp. I saw Lara's stories, I said, quieter now. The banner, the cake. Another pause. Then she chuckled, tight, forced. Oh, that? Lara put it together last minute. We didn't want to burden you. You mean to include me? She pivoted so fast I almost dropped the phone. You know how you are at gatherings. Quiet, tense. It makes people walk on eggshells. I stared at the candle flickering on the piano. Grandma's, the one shaped like a cranberry rose. I'd lit it out of habit, hoping for comfort. Instead, her words burrowed in like ice. You know, she added, tone turning saccharine, you always act like a martyr. Lara just makes things easier. I felt myself slipping, back to last Thanksgiving, standing over the stove, pouring gravy into Grandma's best china bowl. My wrists ached from chopping and stirring. Then came Judith's voice in the dining room. Lara slaved over this meal, bless her heart. Lara hadn't even been there until dessert. I'd swallowed my pride, like always. Later that night, I'd invited Mr. Bell over. He'd accepted with a quiet nod, and we'd shared leftover pumpkin pie in silence. Before leaving, he looked at me and said, Quiet folks often carry the heaviest truths. I hadn't forgotten. My voice trembled now, but I kept it steady. If I make people uncomfortable, maybe they should ask why. She didn't answer. I hung up, staring at the dark screen. Then I opened my laptop, placed my fingers on the keyboard, and began typing to the entire family. It came in a manila envelope, no note, no return address, just truth folded in 3 parts. The porch was quiet that evening, unusually so. A hush had settled over the neighborhood, like the sky itself was holding its breath. I stepped outside with my tea, still wrapped in the faded cardigan Grandma had knit, and the wind chimes above the porch gave a lazy rattle. Mr. Bell's roses swayed across the fence line, their blooms heavy and bowed like they, too, knew something had shifted. That's when I saw it. A plain manila envelope tucked just under the doormat, corners slightly curled from the breeze. My name wasn't on it, but I knew, somehow, that it was for me. I picked it up with both hands. Back inside, I laid it flat on the kitchen table, next to my old college mug and the stack of unanswered messages. No seal, just a loose flap. I opened it slowly. 3 neat folds, legal paper, a stack of bank records, and on top, a sticky note written in firm, slanted script. You deserve to know. The first page made my breath hitch. My grandfather Walter's will. Dated and initiated. The next showed amendments. My name had once been typed beside a property in Pulaski County and an education trust fund. But in the revisions, it was crossed out, replaced with Lara's name. All of it. The house, the savings, the stocks meant for my future. A familiar ache bloomed behind my eyes. I saw us again, me at 10, on the lake with Grandpa Walter, wind teasing the brim of his fishing hat. He'd handed me a peppermint, the paper crinkling in his calloused fingers. Be steady, he'd said, guiding my hands as I baited the hook. The fish respect that. I turned to another page. There was the power of attorney form. I remembered the pen in my hand at 18. Judith smiled too brightly. Just sign this, honey. It's for emergencies, just in case. I hadn't even asked questions. I just trusted. But now I saw it clearly. Every form bore dates and transfers, bank wires, asset sales, cash-out values, all shunted toward Lara's accounts. Labeled as wellness retreat investments, business startup, caretaker support. They had drained what was mine to fund her dreams. I stood up, pressing my hands flat on the table to stop the shaking. But they weren't shaking anymore. "I'm an accountant," I whispered. "They stole from the wrong daughter." From not being celebrated on my birthday to being disinherited, I felt like I was no longer a part of the family. Have you ever felt like I do now? If you sympathize with me, please leave a comment number 9 in the comment section below. Now, let's get to the next development of this story. I didn't raise my voice. I raised the truth and let it speak for itself. The late afternoon sun filtered through the curtains in slanted bands, warming the dining room table where I'd laid out 3 manila folders like chess pieces. My hands smoothed the fabric of Grandma's navy cardigan, steadying my breath. Outside the window, Mr. Bell's roses caught the light, quiet witnesses in full bloom. When the knock came, I didn't move right away. Let them wait just for a second. Then I opened the door and stepped aside. Judith entered first, crisp and composed, her perfume sharp as always. She looked around the room and muttered, "Still so rustic." Paul followed, his tie askew like he'd dressed in a hurry. Lara brought up the rear, sunglasses perched in her hair, thumbs still dancing over her phone. She didn't look up. I didn't offer drinks. No coffee, no lemonade, no polite chatter. "We're here to resolve," I said, motioning toward the table. "Not reminisce." They sat warily. The folders waited. Judith raised an eyebrow. "What is this, Nora? Some kind of intervention?" "No," I said, sliding each folder forward. "It's documentation. Take a look." They hesitated. Then Judith opened hers. I watched the color drain from her face. Paul's lips thinned as he scanned the papers. Lara barely glanced before scoffing. "Seriously? This is about the will? You're still on that?" "It's about theft," I said calmly. "My trust fund, my college account, property Grandpa left to me, all rerouted to fund your ventures, your expenses, without consent." Judith sputtered. "We thought we were helping Lara. You had your job, your quiet little life." "And what did that justify?" I asked. "Taking what wasn't yours?" Paul leaned forward, the folder crumpling under his hand. "You're tearing this family apart." "No," I said, meeting his eyes. "You did that when you stole from me." Lara rolled her eyes. "Oh, please! This is just some midlife tantrum." Judith tried a different tack. "What will the church think, Nora? What kind of daughter takes her own parents to court?" I stood tall, letting the weight of Grandma's cardigan settle around me. "What would Grandpa think?" No one spoke. "You have 48 hours, I said. "After that, my attorney moves forward." They thought silence would shame me. It didn't. It revealed them. The bell above the diner door gave its familiar jingle as I stepped inside. The scent of fried okra and coffee wrapped around me like an old quilt. I passed a table where Mrs. Carlton, from my mother's church circle, quickly looked down at her menu. A few others avoided my gaze. But when I reached the counter, the cook nodded and the waitress, Patty, poured me a fresh cup of coffee. "Took guts, sweetheart," she murmured, sliding the sugar jar my way. "Don't let 'em knock that out of you." I smiled, grateful, and sipped slowly, while the jukebox played an old Patsy Cline tune. Outside, the town square bustled with early summer errands, but inside the diner, time felt gentler. Back home, I found a thick envelope in my mailbox. The return address was Rachel's. My cousin hadn't spoken to me in years. I opened it at the kitchen table, and inside was a letter, handwritten, shaky at the edges. "You weren't wrong," she'd written. "I was just scared. We all were. But your strength is giving me some of mine back." I blinked fast, then folded the letter carefully and tucked it into the drawer where I kept Grandpa's things. Later, I stood in the courthouse hallway, fingers laced, heart steady. The linoleum floor had dulled from decades of footsteps, but today it felt solid under me. My lawyer gave a small nod. The case is strong, Nora. Stronger than most I've seen. A security guard passed and paused beside me. My niece went through the same. You're doing the right thing. Outside, clouds gathered. By the time I returned home, the first rolls of thunder were low and long. Rain dotted the porch railing. I spotted it before I even opened the door. A small loaf of banana bread, still warm, wrapped in foil with a note in firm, looping handwriting. You're not alone, MB. Mr. Bell didn't wave from across the hedge, but I saw his back bent gently over the roses, watering can in hand. I sat on the swing, letting the storm roll in, and opened Grandpa's letters again. His words had always carried truth without noise. He'd once written, "If they won't listen to your voice, let your choices speak instead." Lightning flashed, distant and calm. I touched the cardigan sleeve. "I'm not the broken one," I whispered. "I'm just the one who finally said no." Justice gave me closure, but kindness, that gave me roots. The doorbell chimed softly as another guest stepped into the gallery. Rain tapped against the windows, and the scent of cinnamon buns wafted in from the bakery next door. Jazz crackled from the phonograph in the corner, blending with the murmur of visitors, admiring the quilts and hand-carved frames that lined the creaky wooden floors. 1 year ago, I didn't think I'd ever celebrate a birthday with joy again. Now, in this cozy corner of Asheville, I stood beside the welcome desk beneath a sign that read, "The Gallery of Small Things." Because the little things matter most. The gallery wasn't fancy, but it had heart. Every item on display was made by someone over 60, neighbors, retirees, forgotten talents. I wanted this space to say, "We see you." And judging by the way folks lingered and smiled, it did. Micah rushed in from the back, cheeks flushed. The teenager had once avoided eye contact, but today, they held out a card they'd painted with care. "It's for you," they said. "Happy birthday. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." I swallowed hard, heart thudding. "Thank you, Micah. That means everything." As the afternoon faded, most guests trickled out. That's when I saw him, Mr. Bell, standing by the wind chimes at the entrance, his hat dusted with rain. He gave a small wave and walked over, carrying a worn envelope. "I found this in an old tackle box," he said, offering it gently. Inside was a photo. Me and Grandpa Walter, side by side at the edge of a lake, my tiny hand gripping a fishing pole twice my size. Mr. Bell looked out toward the drizzle. "He always said you'd grow stronger because you had to." I placed the photo on the desk, next to a glass jar filled with peppermints, just like Grandpa kept. A few candles flickered along the windowsill. I breathed in the scent of wood polish, cinnamon, and old stories. My cardigan hugged my shoulders, and the hum of quiet laughter filled the room. "You've built something good here, Nora," Mr. Bell said. "Real good." I nodded, unable to find words. And then he smiled gently, hands folded in front of him. "Happy birthday, Nora," Mr. Bell says quietly. And for once I didn't feel forgotten. I felt found. Some stories don't end with fireworks, but with a quiet porch, a peppermint jar, and a feeling that maybe, just maybe, you're finally home. My journey reminds us that kindness doesn't always roar. It whispers, waits, and sometimes circles back in unexpected ways. Betrayal may break us for a time, but it's truth and tenderness that help us rebuild. When we stop assuming and start truly seeing one another, even the smallest acts, like sharing soup or a photo, can become anchors in someone's storm. So if this story found a soft place in your heart, consider passing that warmth on. A gentle check-in, a kind gesture, it might mean more than you'll ever know.